Hydrogen fuel cells, the engine of the future. Currently, our most common energy comes from coal and nuclear plants. These plants use their fuel to produce heat, which turns a turbine that produces electricity. This process is not very efficient and has many nasty byproducts. There is a glaring need for a new disruptive technology that will be a real alternative to fossil fuels. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. It can be used as a fuel to power an engine. The details of how that works will come later. First, it is important to know where hydrogen can be found so that we know it can be obtained responsibly. Hydrogen is found in nearly everything. However, we most commonly find it in water, plants, and natural gas. Hydrogen molecules will bind to almost anything. In the example shown here, the hydrogen molecule attached to a molecule of oxygen to create H2O. Before hydrogen can be used as a fuel, it has to be separated from any other molecules it is attached to. Using a variety of process technologies available today, hydrogen can be separated from biomass, natural gas, or even water. Currently, the most common method of hydrogen production is called steam reforming, which uses natural gas, and more specifically methane. As you can see from this diagram, steam reforming combines methane with high temperature water or steam to trigger a reaction and separate the hydrogen molecules out. Today, the methane used for steam reforming comes from natural gas, but there is a thought that it can be harvested from landfills and waste treatment facilities instead. Extracting hydrogen from biomass would be a much cleaner and greener way of harvesting hydrogen. Biomass is biological material derived from living or recently living organisms. Biomass can be either plant or animal-based material. Using a process called gasification, biomass is turned into hydrogen that can be harvested and stored for later use. The organic biomass materials are placed under high temperatures, which trigger a reaction that separates the hydrogen out of the biomass. Hydrogen can also be produced by separating water into its two primary elements, hydrogen and oxygen. In the process of electrolysis, an electrical current is sent through the water to extract the hydrogen out, leaving oxygen behind. The electricity to perform this process can be sourced from renewable energy such as wind, solar, or hydro. To quickly sum up, hydrogen is plentiful and there are many clean processes with which we can obtain the hydrogen needed to run a fuel cell. Now, how does a hydrogen fuel cell engine actually work? The purpose of a fuel cell is to produce an electrical current that can be directed outside of the cell to do its work. In a hydrogen fuel cell, the chemical reaction is broken into two parts by using a membrane, seen here in the middle green section, to keep the two gases, hydrogen and oxygen, apart. Every fuel cell has two electrodes, one positive and one negative. These are called respectively the anode and the cathode. These are seen here as the blank sections where the gases enter. The reactions that produce electricity take place at these electrodes. The membrane carries electrically charged particles from one electrode to the other. Fuel cells also have catalysts, seen here as the dark blue lines next to the middle membrane. These catalysts speed the reactions at the electrodes. On the left side, the hydrogen comes into the fuel cell and loses its electrons to the anode, seen in the yellow spheres. This reaction creates H plus ions, the green spheres, which diffuse through the membrane to the other side of the fuel cell. On the other side, the H plus ions react with oxygen and gain electrons from the cathodes to produce water. In order for this to happen, the electrons have to flow from one anode to the cathode in an electric current. In this way, a fuel cell works just like a battery, but has a much higher energy capacity that you can recharge by adding more hydrogen. A single fuel cell does not produce very much energy by itself, so fuel cells are usually stacked together and work in unison to create more energy at a time. Pictured here is another example of how fuel cells work. Note that the diagram is showing you the reaction within one fuel cell and that many other fuel cells are stacked on either side of it. A fuel cell engine could be used in many different capacities, such as generating electricity for a city or even for a single home. It has been suggested, like shown in the example here, that the excess heat that is generated from a fuel cell could possibly help heat water in a home. making it more efficient. However, currently the most typical use for a fuel cell stack would be a car engine. One benefit of a fuel cell engine is that it is much more efficient. A typical gas-powered car is only about 30% efficient. Because fuel cells create electricity chemically, rather than by some form of combustion, they are not subject to thermodynamic laws that limit a conventional power plant. Therefore, fuel cells are more efficient at extracting energy from a fuel. In fact, studies have shown that fuel cells are 80% efficient. Another benefit is that energy is created with very little pollution, the main product being high-quality H2O. The cars we drive now, typical gas and diesel powered vehicles, emit greenhouse gases, mostly carbon dioxide, that contribute to global climate change. However, fuel cell vehicles powered by pure hydrogen emit no greenhouse gases from their tailpipe, only heat and water. Additionally, fuel cell vehicles powered by pure hydrogen emit no harmful pollutants, while typical gas and diesel vehicles do emit a significant share of the air pollutants that contribute to smog and harmful particles in the United States. However, it should be noted that producing the hydrogen to power the fuel cell vehicles can generate greenhouse gases and air pollutants, depending on the production method. For example, this is a picture of a natural gas extractor near Cyprus, which is obviously emitting greenhouse gases as part of its extraction process. Even if this was the only method to obtain hydrogen, which it isn't, the entire process still emits less greenhouse gases than what is emitted by conventional gasoline and diesel vehicles. Similarly, if the hydrogen is produced from fossil fuels, some pollutants are produced, much less than the amount generated by conventional vehicle tailpipe emissions. Going forward, it will be very important to extract hydrogen in the cleanest way possible. In addition to being clean engines, fuel cell vehicles could also reduce our dependence on foreign oil, since hydrogen can be derived from domestic sources such as natural gas and coal, as well as renewable sources such as water, biomass, and agricultural waste. That would make our economy less dependent on other countries and less vulnerable to oil price shocks from an increasingly volatile oil market. There are a few challenges standing in front of fuel cell vehicles. Fuel cell vehicles are currently more expensive than conventional vehicles and hybrids, but costs have decreased significantly and are approaching the Department of Energy's goals for 2017. Some fuel cell vehicles store enough hydrogen to travel as far as a gasoline vehicle between fill-ups, about 300 to 400 miles. But this must be achievable across different vehicle makes and models and without compromising customer expectations of space, performance, safety, or cost. Fuel cell vehicles are more energy efficient than conventional cars, and hydrogen contains 3 times more energy per weight than gasoline does. However, hydrogen gas contains only a third of the energy per volume that gasoline does, making it difficult to store enough hydrogen to go as far as gasoline vehicle will on a full tank. Some critics have noted that traveling with that much hydrogen is unsafe because of the explosive nature of hydrogen and the fact that if there was a leak, it would not be visible to the naked eye. Fuel cell systems are not yet as durable as internal combustion engines, especially in some temperature and humidity ranges. The current infrastructure for producing, delivering, and dispensing hydrogen to consumers cannot yet support the widespread adoption of fuel cell vehicles. Fuel cell technology must be embraced by consumers before its benefits can be realized. As with any new vehicle technology, consumers may have concerns about the dependability and safety of these vehicles when they first hit the market. Plus, they must become familiar with the new kind of fuel. Public education can accelerate this process. Toyota has a plan to help with all of the challenges we've just discussed. To start, Toyota will invite royalty-free use of approximately 5,680 fuel cell-related patents. By allowing anyone to view their patents, Toyota is looking for solutions from everyone concerning fuel cell vehicles. However, Toyota feels like they have overcome all of these concerns enough already to introduce a brand new car to the masses. The Toyota Mirai, which means future in Japanese, is expected to be released this year in Japan, Europe, and California. While large hydrogen tanks would be a problem, Toyota has reduced the size needed by making the Mirai a hybrid hydrogen electric vehicle. The battery performs the exact same way it currently does in a normal gas-electric hybrid. It collects energy from stopping and going down hills, which reduces the amount of hydrogen needed to make the 300 to 400 mile trip necessary to be competitive. The Mirai has been subjected to extensive crash testing to evaluate a design specifically intended to address front, side, and rear impacts and to provide excellent protection of not only the vehicle occupants, but also the fuel cell stack and high-pressure hydrogen tank. Also, the infrastructure needed is beginning to grow. The state of California has earmarked $200 million for as many as 100 new hydrogen stations in the next several years. The pumps themselves are very similar to a gas pump. There is a fuel pump and nozzle just like you are used to, but best of all, it only takes about 5 minutes or less to fill the tank to full. To show you how these systems work together, I would like to end on a short clip that Toyota put together that will give you a better visual of how a hydrogen-powered car will soon be a reality. Toyota is all in on fuel cell vehicles. They just might have the disruptive technology that will power the world's transportation for the next 100 years.